From the outside, they looked like the dream, the gospel couple who inspired millions, the family that made people believe in faith, in strength, in black love. David Mann and Tamela Mann were more than entertainers. They were symbols of hope for people who tuned into Sunday service, listened to gospel ballads, or laughed at family-friendly sitcoms. Their voices filled churches. Their stories filled stages. Their brand filled store shelves. But behind the smiles, the prayers, and the gospel music, there was a storm building. One that would finally explode not from the outside, but from within the family itself. And the person who lit the fuse was their own daughter. Tamela Mann, the woman who had once stood quietly beside her famous parents, had finally reached her limit. Her silence was over. Her truth was ready to be heard. And when she spoke, the gospel world shook. With tears in her eyes and fury in her voice, she said, "My mother is in a wheelchair because no one protected her, not even the man she loved." She wasn't just venting. She wasn't just angry. She was opening the door to a story most people never imagined. A story filled with emotional trauma, medical crisis, family betrayal, and a legacy built not on grace, but on silence. Tamela Mann had become the gospel queen. Her voice had carried people through their darkest nights. Her journey, especially her dramatic 200-pound weight loss, had become a source of inspiration across the Christian community. Fans saw her as a picture of health and faith. Strong, determined, and victorious. What they didn't see were the hospital rooms, the sleepless nights, the whispered pleas for rest, the broken body that was kept moving by medication, surgeries, and pressure. What the public called discipline, Portia called damage. What churches praised as a miracle, she called manipulation. According to Portia, her mother didn't lose that weight naturally. She didn't wake up one day and decide to go on a journey of health. She was pushed, quietly, relentlessly. And at the center of that pressure, Portia says, was David Mann. He wasn't just her father. He was her mother's husband, business partner, and tour manager. And when no one else was looking, he was the person who allegedly kept the engine running long after Tamela's body was breaking down. Portia had seen it all. She watched her mother cry in silence. She heard her ask for time off. She sat outside the hospital room when her mother was rushed in with dangerously low blood sugar. But what hurt most, she said, was what happened the next day. Posters of Tamela's smiling face were still being shared online, announcing another concert date. Behind every photo shoot, every concert, and every praise report was a woman begging for rest. Portia revealed that her mother suffered from intense fatigue, swelling, and pain. But instead of allowing her to recover, the team around her, led by David, allegedly gave her high-powered medications to keep her performing. These weren't simple vitamins or over-the-counter pills. They were prescription injections used to numb pain, mask inflammation, and get her through another show. There was one night, Portia said, that changed everything. Tamela collapsed backstage. For nearly 15 seconds, she had no pulse. Medics called it a glucose dip. Portia called it something much worse. "It was a code blue," she said. "She almost died." But the next day, the show was still on. Tamela's name was still on tickets. Her face was still in the ads. Her voice, already fading, was still being promoted as if nothing had happened. And behind all of that, Portia asked a question that no one seemed willing to answer. Why? Portia called it toxic faith hustle, a system that looked like ministry on the outside, but functioned like a cold, calculated business behind the scenes. Her mother wasn't just a gospel singer. She was the product, the brand, the moneymaker. And every part of her life, from her voice to her pain, was being used to keep that machine moving. Tamela's name was printed on detox kits. Her image was used in AI-generated prayer apps. Her voice was clipped and edited into daily devotionals. Portia hadn't even known about half of them until she started seeing them online while her mother was unconscious in the ICU. When she asked how this was possible, insiders told her that David had used a legal workaround, a power of attorney clause. It allowed him to approve contracts without Tamela's direct signature. According to one assistant, Tamela's face had been licensed to companies while she was in surgery. Portia's response was simple. "You didn't protect her. You sold her." When doctors told the family that Tamela might never walk again, Portia begged her father to shut everything down. "Dad," she said, "just let her rest. Let her heal." His reply? "We'll see how she feels next month." Portia was stunned. Her mother couldn't even stand. The idea that she might be asked to return to the stage was more than cruel. It was dangerous. That was the moment she knew. This wasn't about love anymore. This was about control. And if no one else would tell the truth, she would. Portia recorded herself in her car. She didn't use music. She didn't add edits. She just spoke. "My mom is in a wheelchair," she said. "My dad said he was protecting her, but he was protecting the tour." The video went viral. Over 300,000 views in hours. But then it disappeared. Instagram flagged it. Her account was locked. She was accused of spreading misinformation. But all she did was tell the truth. Meanwhile, gossip blogs that used to post Tamela's health updates and product promos went quiet. The same platforms that had praised her recovery now refused to mention her name. David's team, Portia said, was scrubbing the internet. They were removing anything that made them look bad and replacing it with old clips to make it seem like Tamela was still active. They even uploaded an AI-generated voice devotional that claimed Tamela was feeling stronger every day. In reality, she couldn't even feel her legs. Tamela's wellness journey was still being promoted like it was a miracle story. Ads ran online saying she had overcome her struggles with God's strength and was now leading others to healing. But none of it was real. One insider from Tamela's tour team leaked internal marketing emails titled Post-Surgery Bounce Back Campaign. These emails discussed revenue from her comeback, brand partnerships, and virtual events using her image. Tamela hadn't spoken. She hadn't approved anything. But her likeness, her past footage, and even synthetic audio were being used to sell hope. One promotional campaign was called Stronger with Tamela. But behind the scenes, Portia was helping nurses lift her mother into a chair just to avoid bed sores. The disconnect was unbearable. While David posted "Stay Prayed Up" selfies on vacation, Portia was spending sleepless nights in hospital chairs, fasting and praying for a miracle. She was watching her mother fade while the world was being shown a fantasy. As Portia tried to speak publicly, she faced censorship and silence. Her emotional videos were taken down. Her account was flagged. Some said she was lying. Others accused her of creating drama. But no one was telling the truth about Tamela's condition. A leaked media directive from David's production house confirmed Portia's fears. The memo, labeled TM Recovery Strategy, outlined instructions to avoid mentioning paralysis, repost old gym clips, and limit Portia's visibility across platforms. They wanted the public to believe Tamela was still healing, still active, still fine. They used her voice through AI apps. One app even created devotionals that told fans, "Sisters, stay strong. God is moving my legs again." Portia said, My mother can't move her fingers, let alone her legs. How can you pretend she's saying this?" It was no longer just a marketing strategy. It was deception on a spiritual level. Fans started asking questions. One gospel fan page compared two clips. In one, Tamela walked across the stage in 2021. In the second, from 2024, she was being wheeled into a clinic with her head down. The post read, "Why are we being lied to?" The hashtag, "Where is Tamela?" started trending. Another hashtag followed, "Let Portia speak." Supporters began sharing Portia's words, demanding that her voice not be silenced. Even Tamela's former background vocalists began to speak out. One wrote anonymously, "She used to cry backstage. She'd say, 'I'm tired.' And David would just pat her shoulder and say, 'Just one more song.'" Another choir director said Tamela was so weak some nights they had to hold her up with mic stands. But no one said anything because they feared losing their jobs or damaging the brand. Churches that once proudly hosted Tamela's worship nights started removing her from their event schedules, quietly, without press releases, just deleted flyers and canceled posts. One senior pastor in Atlanta told a reporter off the record, "We believed what we were told. But once we heard Portia's side, we couldn't move forward with these events." A major church in Dallas that had hosted Tamela for years replaced her upcoming concert with a panel titled "Women of Worship." There was no announcement, just a new graphic, and her name removed without explanation. The unspoken message was clear. The gospel industry was pulling back. Then came a public statement that broke through the industry silence. Reverend Simone Hart, a national gospel leader and longtime collaborator of Tamela, posted a video titled "A Reckoning in the Church." She said, "I've worked in this industry for decades. I've seen miracles. I've seen betrayal. But this is a warning to all of us. You can't call it ministry if you're destroying the body God gave you. You can't call it love if the one you love is lying in silence while you sell her voice." Her video went viral. It was shared over 500,000 times. It didn't mention names. It didn't have to. Everyone knew who and what she meant. With the public turning against the illusion, legal questions began to rise. Attorneys began reviewing contracts. One lawyer who specializes in celebrity defamation cases said, "You cannot use a person's voice, face, or story for financial gain while they are unconscious and unable to consent." Portia was also reportedly approached by advocates for emotional distress claims. Her pain was no longer just personal. It had become legal. She had watched her mother suffer and be exploited, and she had been threatened for trying to stop it. Fans who had donated to healing funds demanded refunds. Crowdfunding platforms began removing campaigns related to Tamela when they couldn't verify the legitimacy. One woman said, "I donated because I thought I was helping her recover. Now I feel like I paid to keep her in the machine." Inside the Mann family, the damage was worse than ever. Relatives began choosing sides. Some stood with Portia. Others remained loyal to David. One aunt, known to fans as Aunt Liz, went live on Instagram in tears. She said, "I support Portia's right to speak, but I also know my brother. I believe he thought he was doing the right thing. He's broken too." But for Portia, that wasn't enough. Text chains were filled with arguments. Cousins unfollowed each other. Some blocked each other entirely. Holidays were canceled. Birthdays ignored. What had once been the most beloved gospel family in America was now split down the middle. Mainstream media hesitated to touch the story, but independent faith blogs and YouTubers dug deep. One channel shared Portia's raw, unedited voice memo where she said, "You watched her die a little every day, and you took a selfie with her." That one sentence pierced through every corporate response, every PR statement, every AI-generated quote. It was real. After Portia's revelations, a movement began forming, quiet at first, then louder by the day. Fans, gospel artists, and spiritual influencers began calling for reforms in how artists, especially faith-based performers, are treated. They wanted better protections, real rest periods after surgeries, and transparency in merchandising and voice licensing. The term "faith factory" started trending. People were waking up to the reality that behind many smiling gospel stars were business deals, overworked bodies, and silence forced by image. A nonprofit group called Gospel Care Coalition launched an online petition called Tamela's Law. The petition demanded that every gospel performer receive legal protections after major health events, including the right to rest without financial pressure and safeguards against unauthorized use of their likeness or voice. "We cannot keep burning out our spiritual leaders," the statement read. "If we don't learn from what happened to Tamela Mann, we are part of the problem." Some of Tamela's most dedicated fans began investigating everything: contracts, event footage, wellness products, even donation campaigns. One fan group discovered that a virtual choir experience being advertised under Tamela's name had actually been repurposed from 2018 footage, with AI vocals added in. Others uncovered that the popular detox kits being sold with Tamela's image were outsourced through a wellness affiliate that had never interacted with Tamela directly. They began asking, who approved this? Who profits from this? A former employee of the Manns leaked spreadsheets and marketing documents showing projections for a Tamela comeback tour, including expected merchandise sales, live stream subscriptions, and even a wellness retreat while Tamela was still in a wheelchair, unable to feed herself. As outrage grew, so did the financial impact. One crowdfunding platform shut down a Get Well Soon Tamela campaign that had collected over $250,000. When asked why, a spokesperson said they couldn't verify whether Tamela or her medical team had access to the funds. Several gospel merchandise websites pulled Tamela-branded products off their digital shelves. A few tried to adjust instead, adding new disclaimers like 10% of profits go to Tamela's hospital care. But for many fans, the damage was already done. They didn't want a refund, they wanted justice. With the story spiraling out of control, David Mann's PR team released a short written statement. "We are grateful for the prayers and support for Tamela. We are continuing to trust in God and believe in healing." But there was no mention of Porsche, no denial, no apology. Just a carefully worded prayer request that avoided every serious question. Meanwhile, Portia remained quiet publicly. Her Instagram was dark, her TikTok inactive. But behind the scenes, she was gathering more information, speaking to lawyers, and preparing for what might come next. As the industry tried to recover from the shock, it began dividing. Some gospel singers began posting subtle support for Portia, cryptic quotes about truth rising and God seeing all. Others stayed quiet, not wanting to get involved. One well-known Christian producer was asked during a live stream about the Mann situation. His answer? "It's above my pay grade. I just make music." But silence wasn't neutral anymore. For many fans, silence now meant complicity. Inside the Mann family, communication had broken down completely. Portia and David hadn't spoken in over 3 months. Not a single call, not a single message. Relatives described the divide as permanent. Some tried to mediate. Others took sides. One cousin said, "Portia is doing what's right. You don't watch your mother suffer and stay quiet for a brand." But others blamed Portia for going public, saying she had humiliated the family and destroyed decades of respect. Portia's response was quiet but firm. "I didn't break this family. I exposed the truth." Eventually, some church leaders spoke up, but their messages were cautious. One megachurch pastor who had once hosted Tamela said in a live-stream sermon, "We must support our sisters in Christ, and we must protect them, even from ourselves." He never named names, but his message was shared thousands of times by people who knew exactly what he meant. Another gospel singer posted, "Silence is not safety. Truth is not betrayal." Slowly, the wave was turning. Truth was no longer something to avoid. It was something to defend. For the first time in years, Tamela's public accounts were under scrutiny. Fans noticed that recent posts felt artificial, often repeating vague encouragements like, "God is still working," or "Keep praying." One follower commented, "Is Tamela even writing these? Or is it just her team?" The comments were soon turned off, but the question lingered. Other followers asked for proof of life, not a throwback photo, not a quote, just something real, a live video, a statement, a voice. They never got one. In a now-deleted live stream, Portia finally spoke again. "I didn't want this," she said. "I wanted my mom to heal in peace. I begged for them to stop. But when I saw her face being used to sell something she couldn't even consent to, I knew I had to say something." She paused, then added, "If speaking the truth destroys the brand, then it wasn't built on God to begin with." She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just looked into the camera and said, "This is not about money. This is about my mother." Everything Portia revealed boiled down to one terrifying truth. Tamela's story had been turned into a product. Her weight loss became a sales pitch. Her health crisis became a narrative for overcoming. Her voice, both literal and symbolic, was packaged into devotionals she didn't record, posted on timelines she didn't manage. What started as a ministry became a business. And when that business became more important than the woman herself, it stopped being faith. It became exploitation. Fans were forced to reevaluate everything they once admired. Was that powerful testimony about her new strength even real? Was her wellness journey something she chose, or something she was pushed into? Was her silence spiritual or medical? One fan wrote in a viral tweet, "I prayed with her songs. Now I pray for her life." Where is Tamela's voice now? Not her AI-generated clips. Not the Instagram captions. Her real voice. Why won't David speak directly? Why hasn't he sat down and addressed the public about the real state of his wife's health? And the biggest question of all, if Portia hadn't spoken out, how much longer would they have kept pretending everything was fine? Portia asked that question in private circles. Her answer was that they would have kept going until there was nothing left of Tamela but archive footage and studio recordings. The Mann family empire once stood as gospel's gold standard. Now it is shaken. There are whispers of legal investigations into unauthorized brand licensing, audits into church-funded tours, lawsuits from donors who gave money to healing retreats without knowing the full truth. There is even talk of a formal inquiry by faith-based artist rights groups into medical misrepresentation across gospel labels. Meanwhile, public faith in the Mann brand has fractured. Some die-hard fans remain loyal, defending David and blaming Portia for speaking out. But many more have turned their support toward the one person who wasn't trying to sell anything, just fight for her mother. Tamela Mann remains in recovery. Her ability to walk again is uncertain. Her voice, once the center of every tour, is silent. Doctors say she faces a long road ahead with nerve regeneration, physical therapy, and emotional healing. David Mann faces growing pressure from fans from the industry, and from the truth itself. His public statements remain brief and generic. His team has not denied Portia's claims directly. They haven't acknowledged them either. Portia remains isolated, yet unwavering. She has been blocked by relatives, targeted by online trolls, and silenced by platforms, but she hasn't backed down. In a text shared by a close friend, she wrote, "I'll be the villain if it means my mom gets a chance to rest." This story isn't about one family. It is about the entire system that rewards silence, praises performance over people, and turns suffering into branding. It is about every gospel artist forced to keep going while their body screams to stop. It is about every fan who thought they were supporting healing, but were unknowingly funding harm. And it is about every daughter, son, spouse, or friend who has watched someone they love be used until there is nothing left. The cracks in the Mann empire are now too wide to cover. More voices may come forward. More evidence may surface. The legal fallout may be just beginning. But for Portia, this was never about revenge. It was about her mother. The woman who raised her, prayed for her, sang to her when she was a child. The woman whose face now appears in ads she never approved. The woman who once stood strong on gospel stages and now lies still in a recovery bed, surrounded by machines and prayers. Portia's last public statement summed it up best. "I'd rather have a broken family than a broken mother." So now we ask you, was David Mann a devoted husband or a brand manager who lost sight of love? Did Tamela truly choose her path, or was it mapped out for her while she was too weak to resist? Should we celebrate her comeback or grieve the cost? Was Portia wrong to speak up, or the only one brave enough to do so? If you believe in truth, in dignity, and in protecting the people behind the platforms, now is the time to speak. Comment below. Share this with someone who still believes every smiling post is the full story. Subscribe for the stories others are too scared to tell. Because the truth is no longer knocking. It is kicking down the church doors, and we are just getting started.